Good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call our regular BCC meeting to order. Today is November 9th, 2021. And for the record, the time is 2:16. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Anna Hanson.
Present.
Commissioner Hank Hughes.
Present.
Commissioner Anna Hamilton.
Here.
Shall I mark Commissioner Garcia as excused? Chairwoman?
Commissioner Garcia is running late. He had an appointment that he's at, so he'll be joining us a little bit later.
Okay. And Chair Roybal.
I'm here.
Okay. We have 4 present, and we have quorum. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we do have a quorum. Next on our agenda, we're going to go to the Pledge of the Allegiance, the state pledge, and the moment of reflection. And this will be from our County Treasurer's Office. Mr. Victor V. Hill will be giving us our moment of reflection. So if we could please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and state pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. And if we could remain standing. Mr. B. Hill?
Mr. Chair, it doesn't appear that Mr. V. Hill has joined us via WebEx. Would you like me to recite a moment of reflection?
Yes, Tessa Joe, if you could do that, we would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let us take a moment to focus on the work ahead of us today. Being ever mindful of our decisions and in the best interest of our community, we take a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mascareñas. Okay, I'm going to go to Commissioner Hanson.
I wanted to share with everyone, and I hope that you all received this, but former County Commissioner Robert Anaya's mother passed away on October 29th, and Mary Ann was born on January 11th, 1937 in Illinois, and her parents, Roscoe Danon and Elidor Phillips, and her spouse are all deceased. Mary Ann married Joe Anaya, the love of her life, high school sweetheart, and fellow Stanley Cyclone. Together they began their long life journey while raising their family in Galisteo, New Mexico, and at the ranch in Stanley, New Mexico. Mary Ann and Joe had children, Rick Anaya, Joanne Chung, spouse Roy, Jean Moya, spouse Mike D. Anaya, partner, and Mark B. Anaya, and Robert Anaya. Mary Ann had many grandchildren, and she will be extremely missed by the entire Anaya family. We send our condolences and heartfelt thanks to everyone. They send their heartfelt thanks to everyone who took care of them during this difficult time. And I apologize. But I wanted to mention that because I did write back to Commissioner Anaya and mention that I would mention this from the dais, and he was extremely grateful. I also wanted to mention that one of my longtime friends in Santa Fe, Peggy Carter McDowell, passed away. I had known her since the late 70s, and she was married to Doug McDowell, and her children were Patrick and they are also, I send my condolences to them.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hughes, did I see your hand up as well?
Yeah, I also wanted to acknowledge the passing of Bill Carson, who founded the Salazar Partnership, which evolved into the Sal and Agua Fria School Partnership, where they connected volunteers with underprivileged children to read to them on a daily or weekly basis. And that thing, I think, eventually evolved into communities and schools. And he was just a great example of using your retirement years for something useful, even though he had a great life of service before that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Any other commissioners? Okay, I did have a few announcements and people to add to the moment of silence, and one of them was Marianne Phillips Anaya, and you know, I'm glad that Commissioner Hanson brought that up. I did have a phone call conversation with Commissioner Anaya, and I know that it's a very difficult time, you know, to lose a family member, and I just wanted to thank Commissioner Hanson for bringing that forward and reading it into the record. Also, I did want to mention that and ask for a moment of silence for Luciano Trujillo. He was 78 from Poaquia. This is our former representative, Mr. Carl Trujillo's father. He passed away, and he did do a lot of things for the community and was always a very hardworking man and had a great reputation in the community. Also, I wanted to mention Mr. Guillermo Garduño. He was 60 years old from Nambe. He also passed away. Mr. Nicky Valdez, 33 from Nambe. We had quite a few deaths in the district in the last month, and it's very sad. We had also Mr. Brian Vigil from Cundio. He was 44 years old. Lionel Garcia from La Puebla, 50 years old. Teresa Lucero, she was 69 years old in La Masia. And a classmate of mine, Dr. John Paul Ledoux, 51 years old, formerly from Dixon, but we did go to school together. He did have a Ayers disease, and you know, he had that for 4 years. Mr. Ronald Binion, and also Stephen Garduño from Nambe Pueblo. He was 40 years old, and you know, one of our very own county employees, Mr. David Barros, and he also you know, passed away just yesterday, I believe, so I don't have too much more to share with that, but I know in talking to his supervisor, he was one of our heavy equipment operators in District 1, and he's going to be greatly missed. I know that he had a great work ethic, and you know, we just, you know, don't know from day to day. I just want to also go to Madam Treasurer Jennifer Manzanares. I believe that she wanted to speak a little bit more to this. Ms. Treasurer Manzanares, are you on the meeting?
Good afternoon, Commissioner, members of the Commission, County Manager. Yes, it is with great sadness that a very dear family member, as well as a Santa Fe County employee, David Barros, has passed away. And I'll be visiting with the family this afternoon and sharing his obituary, hopefully at the next Commission meeting. But if we could just keep the family in our thoughts and our prayers, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Treasurer Manzanares, and you know, it's you know, with a heavy heart that we say, you know, so long for now. It's not goodbye. You know, I know that, you know, David provided an invaluable service to our constituents, and all the time, you know, I get a lot of a lot of grateful constituents that appreciate the work that is done on our roads in the district. And I know that sometimes we borrow employees to different districts. I know they had a big project they were working on in El Dorado that they just had a paving project, and we pulled a lot of our resources to get that done for the El Dorado community. And I know that David was a part of that, so I just want to give my condolence to the family, and I'm very saddened for the losses we've experienced in our community. And I thank God for the time that the community and family had with their loved ones. May God bless them and give them peace and understanding. Is there anything else? And so if we could just have a moment of silence. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to item number 1F, and this is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda or requests from the commission? But first, I'm going to go to our county manager.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the agenda was posted 7 days prior on Tuesday, November 2nd at 5 p.m., and the amended agenda was posted on Friday, November 5th at 5 p.m. The items that changed from the original agenda are item 2C, that packet material was updated. Item 4 on the consent agenda, item 4G, that item was added as well. Item 6D, that item was that caption and the packet material were updated. Item 8C, the interim legislative update, that packet material was updated. And then on executive session, item number 3 was also added to the executive session. And those were the changes posted to the amended agenda on Friday, November 5th. And those are all I have.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Are there any other requests or changes to the agenda? Commissioner Hanson?
I will move to approve the agenda.
So we have a
Those
motion from
changes.
Commissioner Hanson.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item number 2, and this is a county canvassing board meeting. Now, the Board of County Commissioners, we're going to go ahead and temporarily recess and convene as the county canvassing board. Now, Commissioner Hamilton, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we temporarily recess and reconvene as the county canvassing board.
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton and a second from Commissioner Hughes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so we're reconvened as the county canvassing board. I'd like to go ahead and start with a roll call. Madam Clerk, would you help us with that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Anna Hanson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hank Hughes.
Yes.
Commissioner Anna Hamilton.
Here.
And Chair Roybal.
Here.
4 are present for quorum.
So we have a quorum and we have a roll call. We're going to go to the approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments to the agenda, or what's the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion from Commissioner Hanson, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. So our next item is item number 2C. And this is request approval of November 2nd regular local election report of the canvass pursuant to the NMSA 1978, Section 1-13-13A. And this is an action item. And so I'm going to go to our county clerk, Miss Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are requesting approval of our results of the regular local election that was conducted this last Tuesday. Teresa is passing out the unofficial results. Essentially, we're asking for approval to be able to forward on our canvassing to the Secretary of State. As this is a statewide election, the Secretary of State will be officially approving the candidacy of all the candidates and sending their certificates.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions or comments for the clerk? If not, what is the pleasure of the board? Commissioner Hamilton?
I move to approve.
Do we have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton for approval? Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Hughes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you very much.
I want to say thank you for all the due diligence from the clerk's office, and great job. Thank you for working so hard for our constituents and making sure that we have a really good and fair election. Thank you so much for that.
Mr. Chair, I would like to say that I wanted to thank the rest of the county who was actually very instrumental in helping us get through many of the new requirements that were piloted and introduced this election. So it was a learning process, and we could not have done it without the county manager's office, IT, and Public Works. So thank you very much.
I appreciate the recognition of everybody that was involved in helping you with that, and just a sign of a true leader. So thank you, Madam Clerk, once again. So we're going to go on to item number 1D, and this is the adjournment and reconveyance of the Board of County Commissioners. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
So
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hughes, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, and I want to say congratulations to all of the individuals that were successful in their campaign for election. We look forward to working with each and every one of you as the Santa Fe County Commission, and thank you for your service. Next, we're going to go on to item number 3, and this is the approval of the meeting minutes. And this is the approval of the meeting minutes for October 12th, 2021, and it's a regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. Are there any changes, or what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hanson?
I would like to move to approve the October 12th, 2021 minute meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson.
Second.
And we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're on to item number 4, and this is the consent agenda. Are there any items on this consent agenda? I know that there was an added item, which was the request for approval of the amendment for number 3 to the collective bargaining agreement with Santa Fe County and the Santa Fe Firefighters Association. Are there any questions or comments relative to these items on the consent agenda, or what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hughes for approval of the consent agenda, and a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, can we get resolution numbers?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So Resolution 4B should be 2021-092. 4C should be 093. 4D 094. 4E 095. And 4F 096.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have Appointments and reappointments. 5A is the reappointment of 3 members to the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee, also known as CIAC, Growth Management. And from the Growth Management Department, we have Miss Maggie Moore.
Green. There we go. I think I just need to lean in. Is that better? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner, Chair, County Manager. Yeah, I am here to seek the reappointment of 3 members to our Capital Improvement Advisory Committee that I'm kind of the liaison for growth management. We currently have the 2 members, Chris Grazer and Dan Pava, who were reappointed just a few months ago in May. And then 3 of the members who've all expressed their willingness to continue to serve the county as members of the committee are seeking reappointment for what would be 3-year terms.
Okay. Great. Thank you for bringing that forward. Are these aren't really specific to districts, or are they?
No, they're not appointed or specific to districts. The requirement in the Development Fees Act is that a percentage of the appointees represent development or housing interests. So that is one of the requirements, yeah. And Cass Thompson, who represents the Rancho Viejo development, is serving, is seeking reappointment there. So.
Okay, great. So are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Hanson?
Not particularly a question, although I think these people are all very well qualified, and I want to thank them for their service to the county and working on this important board, because this is a requirement of our capital projects and the capital improvement in projects. So I think this is really great, and I would like to move to approve Barbara Felix, Daniel Painter, and Cass Thompson.
Okay, I
I'll
would
second.
agree. And that we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Hughes. I agree with those nominations, and also want to thank staff for, making these evaluations and, bringing them forward to the commission. So Ms. Moore, thank you for your hard work with that. So we have a motion and a second. All those under discussion, is there anything else? No? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next we have miscellaneous action items. And the first one is 6A, a resolution adopting participation in the New Mexico Department of Transportation Project LP 50024, administered by New Mexico Department of Transportation for the Northeast-Southeast Connector Road, construction of 3.96 miles of new roadway. And from the Public Works Department, we have Mr. Gary Hidon, or Ryan Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Should have looked up first.
Commissioners. This was one that the staff is asking for approval on the resolution. It's the transportation project funding from NMDOT. This funding, this source specifically is new this year. We were granted $2.5 million to use for our Northeast-Southeast Connector project, which currently sits at about $11.8 million that we have funded currently, that will add and be in addition to that with the rising and escalating costs of construction materials and some of those things. We were really thankful to get this particular fund. And so our ask is that the board would consider this. Our match is 5%. The state shares 95%, so, you know, 2.375 million will be the state's portion, and then the county will make up the other $125,000. And as an update, too, just for the commission and the public as well, currently where the Northeast-Southeast Connector project is, we have Souter Miller as our engineer of record that we're working with, and Souter Miller has been working closely with us to make sure we're moving things forward. We had left off months ago 60% design set. We've been working through, as you know, the acquisition for right-of-way from all the different landowners in that area. We have one remaining, and I believe they're in agreement at this point, and so we're waiting for signature and sign-off on that. And so that's one piece of it. Some other things that I wanted to share is we will make sure that we have fiber conduit put in place for this project, and so we will try to be proactive and have that in so that the internet provider can come in there and connect those folks, as well as I think there's been some question on some of the ad alternates. And so we're really moving forward. Hopefully, we'll be able to do some of those, which is safety lighting, as well as roundabouts at all intersections. Currently, two of the main intersections will get roundabouts, and the ad alternates will take care of all the other intersections. And I stand for any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ward, and I know that this project has been long in coming, and it's been here, in the make since pretty much probably before I was a commissioner, but I know it was pretty intense when I was first on the commission, and that's almost been 7 years now, so I really appreciate seeing this project come forward. Commissioner Hanson?
Likewise, I have been involved in this project since 2006, so I think that I am always grateful to hear anything that is happening, and especially for the people in Oshara Village. They have suffered a long time with this roadway, and the recession definitely, the 2008-2009 recession definitely hurt them in many ways. I want to especially recognize Michael Sandoval, our DOT secretary. When he first came into office, I met with him and mentioned this project to him in 2018, and to see us get a $2 million grant is a really a great thing from the Department of Transportation. Also, thank you for including the dig ones. I really appreciate that, and putting conduit in is really important to me. I wonder about the roundabout or the signal at on Richards and the road that goes into La Padera.
Is it the northern piece
It's
off of Richards?
Dinosaur Trail.
Yes.
Okay, I know that it's Rabbit Road to Dinosaur Trail, and I love that the rabbit gets to become a dinosaur.
Right.
My own sense of humor. So will that remain a signal, or will that be changed to a roundabout?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, that will actually change to a roundabout. The signal will be taken down, but we will, at some point in the future, if there's another intersection needed, we are going to salvage the signalized intersection and all the components to that, and we'll have it at our county yard. So, but it will be a roundabout.
That'll be great. I think that's a really good traffic mechanism for roads. I know you've all heard me say how much I love roads, but I also love roundabouts. And so I think this is a good transition. Since there are already 2 roundabouts on Richards, I think it will make it a much smoother, manageable traffic situation. This is in Commissioner Hughes' district, so I want to allow him the opportunity to make the motion. And So thank you for allowing me those questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson, and thank you for allowing Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just echo what my colleagues have said. We're really glad to see this project moving forward, and I want to thank everybody for having the foresight to apply for this extra money that we needed to make it happen in the higher cost environment. And so, as expected, I'll make the motion to approve this item, this resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. So we have a motion from Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner
Second.
Hanson,
I
would you like
second
to
it.
second?
Yes.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hughes, a second from Commissioner Hanson. Under discussion? Anything under discussion, Commissioners? No? All right. Once
No,
again,
just
we're-
yay.
Yeah. Once again, we're glad to see this finally come to fruition. So, motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can we get a resolution number?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the resolution number is 2021-097.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Garcia?
thank you. Just for the record, just note that Commissioner Garcia is here. He was late, but I'm present now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. And we did have some items that we voted on prior to you being here, and I know that you've probably looked at the items on that were up for tonight, and just if you want to mention if you want to vote in the affirmative with the other commissioners on those items. Or
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to vote my concern on that. And yes, I do vote in favor of the previous cases prior to item 6A.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Okay, so we're going to go on to item number 6B, and this is a resolution requesting a budget increase to the Fire Protection Fund 209 for various fire districts in the amount of $3,836,543. And from the Finance Division, we have our Director, Ms. Yvonne Herrera. And also, if needed, we also have our Fire Department Chief, Ms. Jackie Lindsay.
The funding is allotted based on equipment needs identified in the capital master plan and the fire department's 5-year plan for purchases such as fire apparatuses and equipment, station upgrades and construction, day-to-day operations, as well as maintenance equipment and facilities. And with that, we stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Director Herrera. Are there any questions from the board? Not, what's the pleasure of the board? Commissioner Hamilton?
I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton. Do I hear a second?
Second?
And a second from Commissioner Hughes. Under discussion, are there any comments or questions from the board before we move on? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, can we get a resolution number for this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the resolution number is 2021-098.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we're moving on to item number 6C, and this is a request authorization be delegated to the county manager to negotiate and execute on behalf of the county all contracts and purchase orders necessary for the environmental assessment and resource investigation necessary for Poake related to the settlement agreement with Pueblos and Bureau of Indian Affairs. And from the purchasing division, we have actually from the Public Works Division, we have Mr. Ryan Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, this is a condition of the road settlement agreement with the Pueblos of Nambe, Tesuque, San Ildefonso, and Poake that requires Santa Fe County to conduct an environmental assessment and prepare reports that are required to support the right-of-way applications under Part 169 for the county-maintained roads on Pueblo lands. In compliance with the agreement, Santa Fe County is requesting proposals from qualified environmental professionals or consultants to provide environmental assessment and environmental resource investigation services in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, the National Historic Preservation Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Clean Water Act. As this work is necessary and on a critical path for completion to comply with the agreements, and that the cost of these services is anticipated to require BCC approval pursuant to the County Resolution 2014-143, the Public Works Department requests authorization to be delegated to the county manager to expedite contract negotiations and contract execution for the services. So our request is for authorization to the county manager to negotiate and execute and sign all necessary contracts and purchase orders for the environmental assessments and resource investigations necessary to meet the requirements of the road settlement agreements. And I'll
Thank
stand
you,
for any
Mr.
questions.
Ward. Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Garcia?
Mr. Chairman, Ryan, really, I understand what this is for. This is actually for the county manager to negotiate the provider that's going to help us do the environmental assessments. Once the environmental assessments are completed, who will review the environmental assessments?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, internally, staff will review those type of documents. Through these consultants, we've actually been working with OAS on another piece of environmental, but we do review those internally, both with us and our legal team.
So, Mr. Chair, Ryan, so whenever the environmental assessment is done, due that these are federal lands, is it required that the environmental assessments and all other attachments to the assessment, does that need to be reviewed by BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, or the Environment Department, or is it just staff that's going to review the assessment that is produced by the provider?
If I can, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Garcia, I'll defer to legal Greg Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia. Ultimately, the resulting work product is being done on behalf of the Bureau of Indian Affairs so that they can satisfy their obligations under those various acts. So we are required as the applicant under federal regulations and under the settlement agreement to prepare any necessary reports. But as I understand the actual relationships, again, ultimately we're doing so on behalf of the Bureau of Indian Affairs so that they can satisfy their obligations under NEPA, the National Historic Preservation Act, and the Endangered Species Act.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Are there any other questions, comments? Commissioner Hughes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I understand all of what we're doing, except that I just had a question. Is this something we've already budgeted for, or is this going to come back to us with a budget, or how does that part work?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, this has been budgeted for. We set aside $4 million several years ago by action of the Board of County Commissioners, and it will be part of those funds that we will utilize for this expenditure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right before our meeting, I was on a call with the Western Leadership Network, and the Indian Tribes, Hillary Thompson, who was a former Interior solicitor, mentioned that in in the new infrastructure plan that has just passed, there is money for pollinator programs along right-of-ways. I don't know if we could get any money from that to help pay for this, and at the same time fulfill some of our goals to enhance pollinators. But I am just mentioning that because I had just heard it this afternoon that from Hillary Tompkins, and I will make sure to follow up with county manager and see if there's any money that could be allocated from the infrastructure bill for this.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Any other comments or questions?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I just wanted to
Manager
clarify one thing. We did, Director Hebron is correct that we don't have to come back for budget for this. We do have $4 million, but This was not anticipated as part of the overall project to get the roads completed. So we may have to come back to the board to allocate additional funds. We'll obviously look for other funding sources, but before we complete the construction and paving of the roads. One of the things we have been able to do is get additional recycled asphalt donated to the project, so we're saving money on materials. But I just want to put that out there for the board to understand that we had hoped we would not have to do this piece of the project since those roads have been there for decades, but BIA was not willing to give us a waiver on that. So it is something we do currently have budget in the project budget, but if we get to the point when we finish this and we get to the point of construction and we don't have enough funds to finish constructing those roads, we will have to come back to the board for additional funds if we can't find another source. So I don't anticipate that being for a while, but I just wanted to make sure that the board understood this was not originally a cost we had anticipated having.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Manager Miller. So I'm going to go ahead and move approval for the county manager to negotiate and execute on the county's behalf contracts and purchase orders necessary for environmental assessment and resource investigation.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Roybal, a second from Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Hanson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioners. We're going to go on to item number 6D, and this is the item that had an update to it. So this is an ordinance adopting the 2021 redistricting plan of Santa Fe County Commission districts based upon the 2020 U.S. Census, reassigning precincts to 5 commission districts in accordance with the redistricting plan, amending ordinance number 1989-10 and repealing ordinance number 2011-8. And from the Growth Management Department, we have Mr. Earl Wright.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Didn't think you were going to see me till November 30th after Thanksgiving when I was all fat and happy, but we're here. As you know, on October 26th, the board authorized staff to publish title and general summary on this ordinance. However, since then, staff was asked to bring forth an additional redistricting option for the board to consider. If the board were to approve this agenda item today, both options would be considered at the public hearing at the November 30th meeting. And so essentially, we're recommending that this be approved, but I'll stand for any questions that the commission may have in regards to this option and this notice, this request to publish title and general summary.
The last time we actually met up here, it seemed like we all agreed on what we were going to do, and so are we still at that same recommendation that staff had at the last commission meeting?
That recommendation, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Garcia, that recommendation is still up for consideration. However, there's a second option, which changes another precinct in the city. It switches the city precinct that's moving from District 1 into District 4. And it's on the...
And now you're telling me there's an additional option that was added since the last meeting?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I need to know if we're going to start making recommendations on adjustment of different precincts in different districts. I just need to know where this came about.
Commissioner Hanson, you had a
Yeah,
comment?
so, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, early on, I suggested that precinct 130 be moved to District 4 from District 1, and so I asked for an additional option to be placed on the agenda. So this is a more condensed, a more dense precinct that is more in the city, which is what we talked about as the plan, was that we would move precincts that were in the city and very densely populated. And so I asked for that to be added as an option.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate where this came from, and was just wondering if if the county commission up here would like to start adjusting boundaries that do not affect my district, then it's possible for me to make some recommendations to adjust District 5 and District 4 as well. Or I guess I'm just wondering if we can come up with different options. Then I have some other options that affect my district because I know my district. And so if I want to talk about somebody else's district, then as long as we all agree up here at the county commission that we can make recommendations for another commissioner's or other commissioners' boundaries, I just need to know if we're all on the same level playing field. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. And so this is a recommendation for Commissioner Hamilton's and my district. Is that correct, Commissioner Hanson?
Yes, and I had suggested that quite some time ago.
And this is because of the smaller area that has a denser population?
Yes.
Is there that same situation with the two districts from Commissioner Garcia and yours as well?
No.
Okay, because I thought there was.
This is staying within the city limits and keeping districts within the city limits and condensed.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Wright, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Absolutely.
can you bring up what the additional proposal is so we can see it on a map? Because I'm not too familiar with Commissioner District 4 and District 1 in that northeast area of the city of Santa Fe. So I want to know what we're talking about because, like I mentioned, I definitely know my district, and when it affects my district, whether it's increasing or decreasing precincts in my district, I want to know what's happening in my district because I want to make that ultimate recommendation decision for my district. So if you can please bring that up on the map so I can know what Commissioner Hanson is proposing.
Mr. Commissioner Garcia, it is in your packet.
Sorry.
On exhibit number 2.
Okay, sorry, I just got my board docs up.
And partly it's also right next to my district. And Commissioner Hamilton would be right next to my district.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, which exhibit are you looking at?
I'm looking at option 2, exhibit vote redistrict 2021, option 2.
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about precinct 130 is
Yes.
going to move D1 into D4? Is that what we're talking about, so the proposal?
Yes,
And what is your rationale for making this recommendation?
because it is a densely populated within the city, as we have done with precinct 29 and precinct 145. They are all densely populated and within the city limits.
So that precinct 30 is actually, there's not going to be any additional growth in that area other than possibly minimal infill of housing per half acre, third of an acre in that area. It's already, there's no additional population that's going to happen in that area. So this is, once again, published title summary, and this is our first meeting in regards to, what is it? I just drew a blank.
Yes,
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia. So this is just authorization to publish title and general summary to allow for the two options to be considered on November 30th, and that's when we would have the public hearing.
And when's the last date to, Mr. Chair, when's the last date to get any options that I would like to add to that affects my district? When is the last What is the deadline for staff to give us another option prior to November 30th?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, my understanding is the deadline for this redistricting is the end of the calendar year, is December 31st. These changes will take effect in January of 2022. And
Mr. Chair,
for the record, the map is up there for the public to view as well, and I do have hard copies if you're interested.
Mr. Chair, Earl, I understand the deadline for the state of New Mexico. What is our deadline for Santa Fe County, for the county commission to get my changes, proposed changes, an additional third option to staff in order to put it on the county commission agenda, as well as get packing material to you?
Mr. Chair, we would, Commissioner Garcia, so we have 2 meetings left after this meeting, November 30th and December, what would that be, the 13th or 14th? So if you want additional options, December 14th, we would have to publish title and general summary again. So this particular one, if you do this, we'll literally advertise it tomorrow for the November 30th meeting because we have to have 2 weeks. If you ask for additional ones on November 30th, we don't have enough time to publish between that regularly scheduled BCC meeting and the December 14th BCC meeting. So we would need to have a special meeting sometime probably after the 16th so that there's enough time to get it to the newspaper and get it published for 2 weeks, or after the 15th, I should say, and before the 31st.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Manager Miller. Thank you, Earl. I have no further questions at this point.
With that, I would like to make a motion to approve publish a title and general summary.
So we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second for discussion purposes. I think that being open is perhaps important, and giving the public a chance to comment on options might be important, but I'd certainly like to hear from the 2 commissioners affected, because I think ultimately I would defer to whatever you both want.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Garcia, under discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want clarity from either Manager Miller or our county attorney. So once again, this is to title, publish general summary of a proposal. We're not wed to this proposal yet. And if there's an additional proposal that comes forward for me that affects my district and my adjoining commissioner district, I can still bring that forward. And then we can vote on it on the 30th, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, no, right now, what's in front of the board, so we have one authorization to publish title and general summary for the one option that that the BCC authorized on October 28th. So that's what's currently in effect. If the board does not vote in favor of this particular request, then that would be the only option that comes forward on November 30th. If you vote today in favor of this request to publish title and general summary, it will give you the 2 options. The one that was approved on October 28th, and then this one here. And that's what would be up for consideration on November 30th. If you want any other options, I don't know that we have time to get those in for the November 30th, for the November 30th hearing, unless Attorney Schaefer thinks we would be able to put those back in front of you.
Mr. Chair, and go ahead, Commissioner Garcia.
Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, based upon the direction we were given by the Board of County Commissioners, we started down a path that was somewhat different than what was utilized, I believe, at least the last time, there were many options on the table for redistricting, which was to simply publish a notice of title and general summary of the single option that the board was, seriously considering. What we've tried to do with what is in front of you now is to clearly identify for the public that these are the two options that are under serious consideration, so that the public actually knows what's being considered. I won't say that we could not potentially do something different, but it does give me a little bit of pause to say to the public that it's going to be a sort of free-for-all in terms of options coming, onto the table for the first time at the public hearing that nobody's had a chance to look at or analyze prior to that. So that's a not very precise answer to your question as to how we move forward if we want to put additional options on the table, but I did want to at least give you that context in terms of how we got to where we are today and the path that we were trying to go down.
Mr. Chair, Attorney Schaefer, thank you for that. Here's where I'm going with this, and here's, if we're going to put different options out on the table, other than what we all agreed to at our last county commission meeting, and the general public did not come forward to, at least not to me, or anybody from the public came and talked to me about anything. So, as I had mentioned at the last meeting, is let's take, for instance, my district, the blue area there at the bottom left of the page, and look at the pink area, which is Commissioner District 2. I represent La Cienega, La Cieneguilla. If you actually, in reality, look at precinct 80, which is 1933, that precinct is within the La Cienega land grant. And it just makes me, I feel that the La Cienega land grant, which includes La Cienega, which includes La Cieneguilla, and the land grant that is partially in precinct 80, that entire land grant, if you go by districting, whether it's a county road, a state road, a river, some sort of a monumental, tangible item that you can see, not just a fence line, not just a precinct, I would assume that the entire La Cienega land grant should be within District 3. And the perfect example of that is that Commissioner Hanson knows that when you go down Airport Road, past 599, past the sewage treatment plant, that county road divides District 2 and District 3. That means the La Cienega land grant is half in District 3, my district, and the other half of the La Cienega land grant would be in District 2. And so I just feel that that entire land grant, for example, should be within an entire commission district boundary. And so that's my thoughts as into if we're going to start adding options, then I may want to see if I can propose that option. I haven't decided that at this moment in time right now. So that's where I'm thinking that we had all agreed to the first option last month.
Mr. Chair.
And with that, Mr. Chair, those are some of the concerns I'm looking at the larger picture, that because none of us will be here in 10 years to look at the redistricting. And I'm just looking 10 years ahead as into the next county commissioner that sits on all 5 of these seats here. How is it going to work? Because in that district right there that Commissioner Hanson realizes and knows this, because she has worked on a lot of the projects and a lot of communication that's happening in the petroglyphs area right across the street from my district. And that entire Caja de Rio area, which is not the entire Caja de Rio, but a majority of that Caja de Rio area is within the La Cienega land grant. So that's kind of, Mr. Chair, where I'm thinking 10 years from now, because there's going to be a lot of federal, possibly designation of monument for that Caja de Rio area, that some individual will be meeting with Commissioner Hanson on it. So I'm just trying to absorb all this, and options are going to start flying if we put Commissioner Garcia up, then he'll start thinking, his wheels start turning. And so, as you know, and so that's where I'm at. Those are the questions and concerns, and looking forward, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Earl.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Hanson?
One of the things that we talked about is that we would keep all the precincts within the city boundaries. And that,
It's not in her district.
and that is one of the reasons why we brought this up. And also to deal with Precinct 80, one is that it is part of the Agua Fria Traditional Historic Village. It is part of the Las Campanas area. And the Calle del Rio is also part of that area that I have worked very hard for. This was also, brought to me by a constituent, this request for option 2, and so that is why I have brought it forward. And, that's why about a public hearing, people can comment on option 2 or option 1. And that's all I can say.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, would you be amenable to actually add the removing precinct proposal 45 out of District 3, and let's talk about precinct 80 to add it? No? I don't understand, why not?
Because it's in the unincorporated areas, which is something that we decided that most of the growth that has happened in the county and in the city, it's been in the city. And, so we made that decision that we would stay within the city. Yeah, and so I have worked very hard for the people in the Calle del Rio area, and I'm not willing to give that up because I feel like that is, you don't have enough land to take care of, Commissioner Garcia? What about Stanley? What about Galisteo, or not Galisteo? Galisteo's in your district. Are you taking care of those people also?
Mr. Chair, I don't need to go into any discussion with Commissioner Hanson of what I'm taking care of in my district. And yes, I am taking care of the communities in my district. And I just find it ironic that you're, I'll be honest here, you're actually getting into two different commissioners. I don't know how the commissioners feel. You're actually getting into two different commissioners' district adjustment of their boundaries without even consulting with them. But now we're doing it in a public hearing. So yours and ours, precinct 145 and precinct 80, that's, with all due respect, I would actually talk to you about it and not bring it up in a public hearing. But if you want to adjust precinct 130 and I want to adjust precinct 145, let's put it all 3 or 4 on the table, or 5, whatever it is. This is the reason for why we have Mr. Wright here to help us go through it. So, Mr. Chair, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Are there any other questions or comments? I know that, the decision that was presented in the last BCC meeting, I was actually not present because I was hunting, but I did want to ask, how did I think staff made those recommendations? Is that correct, Mr. Wright?
Mr. Chairman, yes, it was based on input I did receive initially from, before coming up with these, I did speak with Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Garcia. These precincts, again, were the simplest to move within the city. They didn't affect anything in the unincorporated areas of the county. And it was, again, relatively simple fix for the populations that we were over. We're just barely over, so we just needed minor tweaks, if you will, to the districts. And these were essentially logical choices, looking at that criteria of keeping the changes within the city and not changing significantly the unincorporated areas of each commission district.
Okay, thank you. And when you say input that you received, was that input from commissioners, or where did you get the input for that?
Again, it was. I did have a meeting with Commissioner Hanson early on in the process, and also with Commissioner Garcia. You and I had talked about a meeting, but that we never got a chance to do that. And the other commissioners, those are the only 2 I had input in. So this is really just, it was really running the numbers with these precincts is how these options came about.
Okay, and I apologize that I know we talked about looking at sitting down, but I didn't have the time to go to that meeting. But, you know, in conversations with Commissioner Hamilton, and this affects both her and my district, and, you know, I remember sitting here saying, do you have a preference? You know, either way, I look at it as I'm losing constituents, and that's always a hard thing to let go because, you know, you represent these constituents, and so, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, who do I pick, you know? And so I was actually sort of relieved when I came back and I saw that it was presented at a meeting that I wasn't at, that and staff made those recommendations. And I did talk to Commissioner Hamilton and asked her if she had a preference, if that was okay, and she was fine with that. And I told her, well, I'm fine with that as well. But, you know, it's just one of those things where we thought we were coming to a place that we were in agreement, and then we had a little bit of a curveball thrown at us. So, and I understand Commissioner Hanson's thoughts as to her recommendation, but I think ultimately Commissioner Hamilton and I, this is our districts, and so we need to probably talk about that a little bit more. But, you know, and I appreciate Commissioner Garcia's input as well, and I think that, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we vote on this today, then Commissioner Garcia can't make the request that he's asking for as well. Is that correct, Attorney Schaefer, or do we need to make any kind of amendment if that's going to be considered?
Mr. Chair, and also Mr. Schaefer, if I may, Mr. Schaefer, we can actually have a special meeting if we needed to have a special meeting.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, if there's a desire to put more options on the table for further consideration, that's what I would recommend. You would actually end up having two special meetings. The first would be to identify those options so that the public has some notice of what's actually being, you know, considered with a high degree of interest. That would have to be sometime, you know, later this week or on the weekend. And then you would have a special meeting on December 2nd, which is a Thursday, to have a public hearing on the options that are put on the table. And then that would ultimately allow us to meet the deadline of having the amendatory ordinance in effect by January 1st. So I think it is doable. I believe, and Earl's been through more of these than I have, but certainly providing the, you know, public notice of options under serious consideration, I think would be a recommended best practice, if nothing more. Would you agree with that assessment, Earl?
Yes, Attorney Chairman and Roybal and Attorney Schaefer, I think, yeah, it probably would be good to get it properly announced. And again, I can certainly come up with more options. Still capable of burning the midnight oil if need be. So,
Commissioner Hamilton?
I just wanted to reiterate that the two options that are in front of us today that affect the choice of one or the other precincts that go between our two districts, Commissioner Roybal's and mine, are very nearly equivalent in terms of numbers and whatnot, and they were both presented by your department. And at this point, you know, they're both reasonable options. And so in the past couple of weeks when I had discussions with Commissioner Roybal, there was no reason to have a preference for one or the other. I see no reason not to just pass this and have the public have two options, you know, to look at.
I agree, and I mean, we did, you know, Commissioner Hamilton and I did have conversations, and we were fine with staff's recommendations, and, you know, we were fine with moving forward in that direction. But just to make sure that I understand, I'll go to Commissioner Garcia.
Why did you choose precinct 130 instead of precinct 36?
If
They
you-
have the same number of voters, same number of population. Why did you choose precinct 130 instead of 36 or why did you choose precinct 1? Why did you choose precinct 130 instead of precinct 27? Why did you choose precinct 130 instead of precinct 25?
If you want to read the minutes and go back to the minutes when we first talked about this, those were the two precincts that I had talked to Earl about when I had met with him many, many months ago, and you can find it in the minutes. And it suggests that I said 130 or 30 was a very good option, and that is in the minutes. And I can promise you that because I read the minutes and I know what I said. And I just felt like that they were easily, like they kind of melded into the district. They didn't create any issues. And I just think that Precinct 130 is very densely populated and matches with Commissioner Hamilton's district in the city. And if there is going to be growth, it is most likely it's going to be difficult to be in 130 because it's a really populated, dense district right at the moment.
And what does that have anything to do with why we're redistricting and?
It was just a suggestion, and I am continuing. I was just bringing it up as another suggestion. It is a densely populated area within the city, which is what we talked about before. I didn't think this was such a big issue. I definitely think that it's up to you and Commissioner Roybal which district you want in your district.
Which is why you were making the suggestions weeks and weeks ago for our districts?
I made it, and it's up to you what you want to do.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? I would agree with Commissioner Hamilton that this is something that, whenever it comes to two different commission districts, that it's really not the place for another commissioner to make recommendations, especially without consulting the commissioners from that district. It's just not right, disrespectful, but, I would agree with that. Commissioner Hughes, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say I think this is, I had been so happy at the last meeting that we had decided it and it was all simple and done and we didn't have to do anything else, but I do think that there will probably be some constituents who want to talk about these two options and we should give them the chance. That would be my opinion, however this came about.
I would agree, Commissioner Hughes. And so, once again, if we vote on this, then we will move forward with two options for Commissioner Hamilton's district and my district, but not the other two districts. Is that correct? Yeah. So, I guess at that point, we have a motion and a second. So, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Aye. So I really think that, Commissioner Garcia brought up some valid points, and I think that his points should have been considered, so that's why my vote was no.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, I want to say it appears to me that there's something, and if I find out, and I will bring it up on the record, if this is being made for reason, it will be brought up by me at the next county commission meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wright. We appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. So we have the redistricting plan. This is an ordinance though, so we won't get an ordinance number till we have the public hearing. So we're gonna go on to item number 7, and this is matters of public concern. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the commission? Tessa Jo, has anybody signed up?
Mr. Chair, no one has signed up at this point. If there is someone who's joining us via WebEx, you will have to unmute yourself by selecting *6.
Okay, so once again, if you're participating through the telephone, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and state your name for the record. And if you are participating through WebEx, please unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Once again, I'm going to ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to address the commission. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go on to item number 8. And this is matters from the county manager. We're going to get 8A, which is a COVID-19 update, 8B, which is miscellaneous updates, and also we're going to have the interim legislative update, which is 8C. So, Manager Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, let's see, let me start with the COVID-19 updates. Oh, I wish I had better news, but both Santa Fe County and New Mexico continue to see a rise in the number of COVID-19 cases. All counties but 2 in New Mexico are in the red zone, indicating a high rate of transmission. And overall, Santa Fe County is seeing an average number of 30 cases a day, but daily numbers began to climb again last week. Our cases per 100,000 from October 19th through November 1st were 20.9. Our positivity rate was 4.53%. Our percent of residents with at least one shot are 93.3%, and the percent of residents with their vaccination series completed is 82.5%. But I wanted to also highlight that and I don't have this by county, but in New Mexico, the last meeting, Commissioner Hanson, you asked if vaccination rates are so high, why are we still having so many cases? Well, if you look across the state, from February 1st to November 1st, there's been 103,000 cases, 103,543. 81.4% of those have been with the unvaccinated, so over 84,000 of the 103,000. And hospitalizations, there's been let me see, it's over 7,000 with 86.2% of hospitalizations among the unvaccinated, and deaths 1,168 in the state, with 92.1% of those unvaccinated. So from the information that we've been able to get from hospitals and Department of Health, that this increase, it's that the Delta variant is so very virulent and spreads rapidly among unvaccinated, and also vaccinated can get it, but the severity of symptoms is much greater amongst the unvaccinated. And as I said, a good 82% of the cases, positive cases since February 1st, since they've been tracking vaccinated versus unvaccinated, have been with the unvaccinated. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, we continue to work through negotiations with our bargaining units, and we're moving forward with the vaccine policies with the different bargaining units. And we have several vaccination events that Santa Fe County is participating in or hosting over the past 2 weeks, and we'll continue to have some in the coming weeks, but we've had one in Milwaukee, Madrid, Santa Fe Community College, and at our Public Works Department, which was very highly attended. That site yielded about 145 vaccinations, including many Santa Fe County employees. We also are in the process of amending our contract, or RFP to include an additional $90,000 for COVID-19 public awareness campaign that would include messages relative to vaccinations, mask mandates, mitigation efforts, strategic mitigation efforts to reduce the physical and emotional toll of COVID-19 on our community. Needless to say, everybody, I think, has pandemic fatigue. Also, we have begun to procure some of our ARPA contracts. We're working on a memorandum of agreement with the City of Santa Fe on the Up Together funding that the board approved. They are going to work with us to help execute those expenditure of those funds. And also we have a request for proposals for substance use and harm reduction services in Edgewood and East Mountain area for the Crisis Triage Center in Edgewood. That had originally, we were working with Bernalillo County to move forward with Bernalillo County. They have decided to focus their efforts into Harris, so we are going to move forward, still coordinating with them, hopefully, on provision of services just in the southern part of the county, northeastern part of Bernalillo County, northern part of Torrance County, but we'll be working to move forward our getting our facility up and running in the southern part of the county. And those are all the COVID-19 updates I have.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Manager Miller, so much for those updates. It's definitely sobering news. I want to say there was some good news last night at the Agua Fria Village meeting. The El Camino Real School has an extremely low rate of COVID transmission compared to some of the other schools, and I was really happy to hear that for the children in my district, especially those who attend the El Camino Real, because that is a very populated school. It has over 780 students, and the fact that they've had 7 cases over the last month or so is really amazing, and I want to give them a shout out for doing such a great job of keeping their children safe. And so thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Manager Miller?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair.
Excuse me.
Lady,
Commissioner Garcia.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for bringing that forward. I was going to bring that forward, but thank you once again. Yes, the schools are actually challenged by the kids are kids. It's getting to the season where the flu's coming around, but yes, El Camino Real is doing excellent in regards to the COVID testing and the results. Thank you for that. Manager Miller, thank you for, in regards to the East Mountain area, which is on the east side of my district. And thank you for working with Bernalillo County, because as you know, there's a road or two that separates Bernalillo County pretty much all the way down to Torrance County, Santa Fe County, and that tri-county area. And I have received the booster. They received it last Friday, and I think our team that goes throughout Santa Fe County is doing an excellent job. And it actually does help out that we are working with, in the southern part of my district that I know, is we are working with all 3 different counties, and people can go to our mobile unit and get a vaccination. In regards to, Mr. Chair, in regards to Manager Miller, do you have any pulse of what the governor's office is going to move forward with on the mandates, mask requirements? Just
extended till November 17th, mask mandate.
So I just want to know if you have any idea what the administration with the governor's office is going to possibly come forward, because I was at a sporting event last Friday for when the congratulations, by the way, to the Santa Fe Demons boys soccer took the state title, and nobody was wearing masks there. And I understand it's outdoors, but I just wondered if you had any pulse from the governor's office as into where the state of New Mexico is going to move forward with mandate vaccination as well as mask requirements. If you have any answers to that, Madam
Mr. Chair,
Miller.
Commissioner Garcia, I know that the governor's administration, Dr. Scraves, they're very concerned with the continued increase in the surge in positive cases. The hospital systems are struggling and under kind of an emergency order there. I know that they had extended the indoor mask mandate the last time, and it's up for review again. And with the count we had just this last weekend, 3,300 for 3 days, it just tripled what we had been seeing. So I think there is a great concern that there's going to be another surge as it gets colder and as we get into the holidays, and that I think that the focus is still on very much get vaccinated. Also, a federal mandate came down for OSHA states, and we are one of those, that there has to be by January a mandatory vaccine testing policy for any employers over 100. So I think I know that the counties, because I have a lot of communication with all the other county managers, that's something that they're all, because a lot of counties don't have either vaccine or testing mandates. The big Bernalillo, Albuquerque, City of Santa Fe State currently have a mandatory vaccine or mandatory testing. I would see more and more shifting to mandatory vaccination because testing doesn't prevent it. One thing that a study was completed, and I heard it come out over the weekend, that unvaccinated hospitalizations have cost American insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, cost Americans $5.4 billion since the vaccines have been available. That's based on 187,000 hospital stays for unvaccinated at an average of 20,000 a stay. So insurance companies are also stating they're going to start changing their insurance provision for that. That also came out over the weekend. Their insurance requirements for unvaccinated. So I think I can't speak for the administration, but what you're seeing is that the cost of this virus on the healthcare side is really starting to be evaluated, what that impact is across the country. And you're going to start seeing more and more employers, states, local governments, insurance companies, whatnot, try to mitigate that impact because it's in the billions. And so, and one of the ways to do that is mandatory vaccination. So I can't speak for what their next announcement will be, but I know there's great concern about the holidays and a winter surge and increased cases.
Mr. Chair, Manager Miller, thank you for that. And I understand that the President's administration is requiring the vaccination for employers over 100, and there are, as we know, organizations nationwide that are actually challenging the President's request through the court system that is possibly going now as we speak. And I understand the individuals that have not been vaccinated, the ability to catch the virus is very high, and people that have had vaccination are also still getting COVID. And so it's a huge, large moving target that the nation, state of New Mexico, local government entities, ourselves as policymakers need to determine what the best is for the community as a whole. And I just wanted to bring that forward, Mr. Chair, my colleagues here. Thank you, Manager Miller.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay. Yeah. So go ahead, Manager Miller, if you
Thank you,
proceed.
Mr. Chair. So that completes the COVID-19 updates. Under miscellaneous updates, I don't have too many except very important event coming up on Saturday, November 13th. That's a job fair and rapid hire event for our at the Santa Fe County Fairgrounds, and that will have individuals from representatives from Human Resources, Fire Department, Corrections, Public Works on site to answer questions and assist with the application process and rapidly recruit for vacant positions. The ones we'll be focusing on, but they won't be limited, but the main focus will be to dispatchers, emergency dispatchers, detention officers, sheriff's deputies, registered nurses, equipment operators, utility systems operators, custodians, maintenance workers, community planners, and various administration business positions. And the idea is that people will be able to come there, fill out their application, get an interview right on the spot, where we have that ability, and if possible, make offers right. Contingent offers based upon background checks and whatnot, but at the rapid hire event. And we also, Keswavi will be there on site at the fairgrounds with us from 10 to noon to assist with promoting the event and speaking with representatives from our Public Works Department and our Public Safety Department. And if you are in the neighborhood, stop by and encourage people to come out to the rapid hire event. And then I had one other update. I think that the board will be happy on this announcement. I see her sitting in the back. Cindy McKee is sitting with Elias in the back. She is our strategic planning and operations director that we just hired, and she started on Monday in the manager's office. So expect to start hearing from her soon.
Great, that's wonderful, and welcome, Miss, was that McKee? Is
Yes,
that correct?
Cindy McKee.
Cindy, thank you, and welcome to the county. We're glad to have you. It's going to be exciting to have you here working with us on the different projects that we have here at Santa Fe County. So we're excited. Thank you for being here.
Oh, and Mr. Chair, I just had one other update. We had in utilities over the course of the pandemic, we had had a lot of customers who had gone delinquent with their utility bills, but we, and I had announced, probably in August that in October we would start sending shut-off notices, but I'm happy to say that we really directed a lot of people to some assistance, and we had very few customers that needed to go through a shut-off process. So we're continuing to direct people to the state programs where they can get their assistance in paying their bills, and working with people before having shut-off notices sent to them. So I just wanted to let you know that there's maybe just a few that are still pending disconnection if they don't come forward and work with us on a payment plan or getting assistance through one of the many avenues that are available right now.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I know that there's a lot of people struggling with those issues. So I'm glad that we were able to, and that's with our community service department through our navigators, correct? That will send them in that direction. And I did have a constituent that called one of the acequias in the area where I live up north in Powake, and they asked if there was any assistance relative to people that are unable to pay their bills, their acequia bills. And I was just curious, would that fall into that category possibly? I know that Community Service Department was looking at that, but I hadn't heard anything. But I was just curious if you would know if that possibly would fall into that criteria, because it's a bill, but it's a acequia bill that they get yearly, and I guess the acequias have a huge amount of people that aren't able to afford to pay that.
Mr. Chair, I don't know on that one whether an acequia bill would qualify for utility type bill, but certainly we can follow up with you and get the information back to your constituent.
Great, thank you, Manager Miller.
So with that, I am done with miscellaneous updates, and I believe, yes, he is. Hachi is here. It's that time of year again where the interim committees have been meeting and developing all their legislative proposals. It's a 30-day session, but that doesn't mean there aren't lots of ideas floating around out there for legislation. So Hachi's going to start us off with our first legislative report for the upcoming session, interim legislative report. Thanks, Hachi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Hachi Miller, Santa Fe County Manager's Office. What I'm here to do today is provide you a brief update of the occurrences which have been going on in the interim of the legislature. They've been meeting since May of this year, and the committees are meeting actually today and will be meeting this week and into next month. The report that I have is rather brief, and that is to allow any discussion that you may have regarding any legislative matters that you would like us county staff to look into for you, and also look at any past legislative items which may have occurred and may not have passed. We'll be willing to bring those forward again and look at any of those. The first page of the report are the session dates, and the session starts up on January 18th and it ends on February 17th. So as Manager Miller pointed out, it's a short session, a 30-day session. It's the budget session, so everything and anything people are going to be asking money for services from the state are going to be brought up. Your capital outlay dates are, you could start putting in for your projects in October 7th of this year, and the submission deadline, as it usually is halfway, is the midpoint of the session, and that's January 13th, and those submissions are due by 3 p.m. that day. Also, I have on the calendar of legislative events is a possible redistricting special session, which has been rumored to take place next month, December 6th. So that's most likely going to be quick. A one-day special session usually covers those matters, and they'll have that before they start the regular session in January. Starting on page 2, there's been the usual discussions in the interim committees of all the different groups within the state and their wants and needs. And the two major items which there has been definitive proposals of legislation is one, the budget, and the second is on crime. And the governor has outlaid some particular ideas that she has regarding ways of adjusting the high crime rate within the state. Starting off first, though, let's talk about the state revenues. And the outlook looks good for the state right now. What the number that legislators are going to be looking at for this session is this dollar figure within the column, the third column there on page 2, and that's the $1.39 billion. that 1.39 billion is considered new money that's going to be occurring in fiscal year 23. So what that means is that new money is going to be up for new projects and services by the state. So something that's not covered right now, and that might be, or that could have been a wish list item in the past, they're going to try to introduce legislation so that a new project or service can be covered by that reoccurring new money revenues. And so that is quite a substantial amount of new revenue that has been seen in the state in its, I would say, its entire existence. So it's going to be fast and furious. The ideals floating forward of how to spend that much money within the 30-day session. As I mentioned before, the crime issue was the other issue which solidified legislation has been proposed so far. And what the governor is proposing is $100 million devoted, go into a fund that would collectively allow 1,000 additional statewide officers. And what she has said about that is that it's not just state police that she's trying to get 1,000 new more state police. Somehow those 1,000 new officers would be statewide. So it's the belief that this would trickle down and go into local law enforcement agencies as well, sheriff's offices and municipal police departments as well. The second item that the governor has proposed is another look at bail reform. Bail reform is the other crime-related measure declared by the governor to be on her agenda to combat crime. In particular, those crimes committed with a weapon will disallow persons to not be eligible for release before trial. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Looking at is the reason for the increased crime, the fact that there aren't as many offenders being sent to jail automatically, and is there something that the state needs to do to re-examine that? The one for sure certain reason for crime increase is believed that people using weapons are still being released. So she automatically wants to take that out and say, you're using some sort of weapon within your crime, it's demonstrating that there are violent tendencies associated with the crime that you're committing, and she wants to definitely keep those persons behind bars. So those were the two items right now, and I think there's a multitude of different options and considerations being put forth right now as to how to address crime, both within the metro areas and in the rural areas within the state. I think everybody's seeing it over this past year for sure. The next big issue which I have here on page 3 was the environment. And in particular, the legislature held the New Mexico Climate Summit, and that was in October. And the focus was how the state can move forward from fossil fuels in an equitable energy transition. And also discuss the energy transition, how is it better to protect air, land, and water, and to diversify the energy economy, creating competitive wage jobs. So I have not seen any particular pieces of legislation addressing these issues which they brought forth within the climate summit, but based on the fact that they held the summit itself, is an indicator that they are looking to address the change for sustainable practices for energy within the state. So we should look forward to seeing changes within the state that's going to address this particular issue. One particular item that has been spoken about by a legislator was the New Mexico Green Amendment. And this was supported by the commission last session. And it looks as though this particular proposal will be brought forth again. And in the interim, the supporters for this particular Green Amendment have been going around and obtaining more support for this particular amendment. The next item I have within the report is on page number 4, and this is the New Mexico County's priorities. Last year, there was not a resolution brought forth by New Mexico counties, but this year they are once again bringing forth the priorities which the board has identified, and soon will be seeking the support from the Santa Fe County Commission as well. And I can go over those. The particular items within House Bill 2, which is the state budget, that they're going, or that they have identified as priorities, is money for the detention reimbursement fund, RISE program funding, the law enforcement protection fund, and also courthouse funding. Also, an item that the NMC is supporting, but hasn't identified as a priority right now, is a memorial to study a unified jail/prison system. They want to take a look at seeing if each individual county and the state working to house inmates is not the way to go, and maybe that there is another solution which involves all the counties and the state and addressing the inmate issue within the state, and could there be cost savings behind this? On page number 5, I have identified, in speaking with the different commission districts, that these are expected legislative action items that are coming up. And the first one being is the support for the para retirees return to work for a period of 5 years. And this is brought forth to address the current employee shortage within local governments. It's thought that if localities are able to dip back into the pool of retirees, of para-retirees, perhaps we can work to address the staffing shortage which exists across the entire state in all its local governments. The next item is the Coalition of Sustainable Communities New Mexico Legislative Priorities. This goes to address the different environmental and sustainable issues brought forth to address climate change issues within the state, the nation, and the world. Next item is New Mexico County's legislative priorities, which I just addressed. And lastly is the New Mexico Food and Ag Policy Council legislative priorities. And that covers a lot of different things, including issues regarding farmers, ag producers, food supply, and funding for food supply, food banks, those types of issues. Lastly, I have on here the various resolutions which we had passed in the county last year for the pieces of legislation that the commission wanted to provide support for. And with that, those are the different topics that I needed to discuss to get your input as to direction that we need to go forward in the upcoming legislative session in 2022. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Commissioner Garcia, and then I'll go to Commissioner Hanson. My glasses.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Miller, thank you for being Santa Fe County's eyes and ears at the session. It's something that you bring forward to us. There's times out there that we cannot make it out there. I appreciate that. This morning I had an early morning with several senators and several representatives, and some of the topics did come up. Police officers, do you know if the governor is actually talking about state police officers, or is she going to allow for that funding, potential funding for local government agencies? That's a question. Just might want to look into that. Also, crime. When I get home today, I'm going to look at the news, and there's going to be our 100th homicide in just Albuquerque alone, and which is very sad. And I think it's good that the governor's office is going to look at crime, because it's unfortunate. Like I said, I'll get home and there's going to be that 100th homicide today, unfortunately. Senator Worth talked this morning regarding MFA, which is Commissioner Hughes is probably definitely on top of this stuff and interested in it, is regarding affordable housing for teachers, workers, individuals that cannot afford a $580,000 home off of Richards Avenue and Governor Miles Road that sold the other day down the street from a friend of mine. I was amazed, $580,000 on Governor Miles and Richards Avenue. But he said he's going to try for the $12 million, as you mentioned, to get that to go to Mortgage Finance Authority so we can help out with some sort of affordable housing statewide. You know anything what's happening with the hold harmless? Maybe Manager Miller knows what's going to happen with the hold harmless. Are they still, where are we at in regards to that? These are things if you can just look into if we don't have the answers for them today. In regards to the PERA, the Public Employee Retirement Authority, I believe it's authority. It's interesting how that bill is moving forward, because as some of us know, Manager Miller definitely knows this, is the fund, in order to keep the fund solvent for the people that are going to be retiring or have PRA pension, it's a challenge there to keep that fund solvent. And so the state legislature is going to need to step in to see what and how they're going to keep that fund solvent. Another fund that they talked about is regarding ERB, which is a different type of retirement fund for educators throughout the state. Those work hand in hand together, as well as bringing in retirement individuals. State police, let's take for example. They bring in retired individuals that retired from the state. They want to come back to work. All this is affected throughout the state's budget. And I appreciate the work that you're doing on that, Mr. Miller. Those are just some of the items that, as well as the previous resolutions we passed as this commission, and those are just some of the items that come to my head right now as you're standing in front of us in regards to the legislation that's going to be proposed and how the state legislature is going to take the state of New Mexico to the next budget cycle. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, and great points that you brought up. We appreciate that. I'm going to go to Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering, with this crime bill and the fact that it's talking about distributing it throughout counties, cities. Do we need to apply for that? Do we need to request more money for the sheriff? Or, you know, is it?
Mere fact that she's brought the 1,000 officers statewide, there aren't much more details other than that. It might be a good preemptive measure at this point, funding to deal with crime that happens here within the county. And just let it be known to the governor's office that we are in need of funding as well.
Yeah, I completely support proactive ideas when it comes to crime. Clearly, the crime from Albuquerque spreads and moves up the state and down the state, and so the more proactive we can be as a county to protect our citizens, I think that that's really important. I want to say that I support the resolutions that we brought forward last year, and thank you for listing them all. I really appreciate that. I know that the coalition will have some new listings, and so I'm looking forward to bringing that forward also from the coalition. I thought it was really important that the tribal communities had a seat at the table at the climate summit and were able to talk about how important this is to them also. And then today at the Western Leadership Network, it was about the Native Heritage Month and how tribal leaders throughout the western part of the country are really working to solve the climate issue and how they can participate. I didn't get to the entire meeting, but it was recorded, so I'm looking forward to listening to it. But there were representatives from all of the western states and all the tribal nations in the western states. So that was really interesting to hear how they want to participate. And otherwise, thank you very much for the entire update. I appreciate it very much. And it's nice to see you in person.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, yes, I forgot to mention that at the beginning. I'm glad to show that I'm still existing in reality other than virtually. So it's all good to see you in person as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question. I assume that we would be putting together another resolution this year with our priorities. What meeting would we be aiming for? The last meeting of the year for that resolution, or the next meeting at the end of November?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hughes, what we've done in the past is we've put a resolution usually requesting the board to adopt the New Mexico counties. We'll either do that on the 30th or the December 15th meeting. Then we also, commissioners have brought forward their own initiatives that we've added. Either we've done individual resolutions for them or we've added them to our list, as you saw at the back of Hutch's report. He had all of the ones that came from the sustainability community, sustainable communities. We had our senior services infrastructure, our ICIP. What we're going to do, and then we've had legislative priorities that we've known of at the time that we kind of pile everything together. That's usually New Mexico counties and anything that you've brought forward. But we've tended to do them not all at once in one comprehensive resolution. We try to, what we know of. before the end of the year or the first meeting in January. But this year, I think we're going to try to have some stuff in front of you. Prior to that, one of the things we wanted to do is have a breakfast with the legislators, but it's going to be a little bit challenging because they have their own redistricting process, and I don't know how long that's going to take. I don't know if that's something that we can have a breakfast while they're doing that. That might be nice if they don't start too early. And that's usually where we provide them a copy of our ICIP and individual letters to each one about our capital needs that are related to their own districts. So we will be sending to the liaisons a copy of the ICIP, a list of the projects within your district. We'd like you, once again, to rank them in priority order so that then what we do is we kind of overlap that with a legislative district map and try to request funding in those areas that your districts overlap with a legislative district. And then we've also done the county-wide requests. When the board adopted the ICIP, we didn't have really county-wide requests. We had one priority from each district, but we will put forward some county-wide requests, and we consider like our public housing sites as a county-wide request, our main water system if we have any needs there, some of our bigger projects that we put forward to them. AMIT has been, additional AMIT funding was considered a county-wide request. So we'll be bringing that to you as a group, but we will ask the liaisons to work with you individually so you can see what projects are currently funded but underfunded with state appropriations, or what projects are funded and needs maybe some gap funding through the capital process, and then what projects you have on the CIP that you think we would need additional funding, so and your priorities on those, so that we can then put the letters together. And what we've tried to do is put those requests in along with a resolution that kind of covers everything we have to date from the BCC as legislative priorities. So this one, as I said, we're kind of kicking it off, but I would highly recommend in the next 2 meetings that if you have priorities, you bring those forward so that we can get that information to the legislators before the beginning of the session. Also, we'll probably start sending out to you some potential dates for a breakfast. That's been our best attended. We've had dinners, lunches, but what seems to work best is a breakfast when they're actually in session, but not too, or kind of the week or two before when they're focused on being here for the legislative session. So that's probably what we're going to try to do. I have some limitations on my schedule, so I'm trying to find a date that works with the legislative schedule as well as my schedule and the commissioner's schedules. But we'll be sending emails to that effect, so I would start looking for those as well. I know that was a long-winded answer, Commissioner Hughes, but it was a segue into what I was going to tell you all anyway, so hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you. That answered my question and more.
Okay, thank you, Manager Miller. Any other questions? I do want to thank Mr. Miller as well. I'm just glad to see you. It's been a bit since we've seen you in person, so we're happy to be in the same building together. So thank you, and yeah, thank you for all your hard work, and you do a great job representing the county. So we just want to say thank you for that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Did we, Commissioner Garcia? Okay. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Okay. So we're going to move on to our next item, and it's item number 9. And these are matters from the county commissioners and other elected officials. These are action items, and they are, commissioners' issues, comments, including but not limited to constituent concerns, recognitions, and requests for updates for future presentations. And so I'm going to go to our first commissioner. I'll go to Commissioner Garcia.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd just like to, first of all, this week's an important week for our country and for individuals that actually have served and are serving and did serve in the military. Veterans Week, Thursday's Veterans Day, and just like to thank every veteran out there that has participated in the military affairs for the government of the United States of America. And thank you to all you veterans out there. We really, really appreciate you for what you have done and what you do, and especially to your families that lend you to the United States of America. Thank you, veterans. A couple of events. We did have a trash cleanup on Saturday in near the Santa Fe River, near the petroglyphs in District 2, across the street in District 3, which is that entire road there, on the 30th of October. And some of the organizations that were involved there was New Mexico Wildlife Federation. They assisted in putting that together. HECHO, H-E-C-H-O, which is Hispanic Enjoying Camping, Hunting, and the Outdoors. They were very instrumental in having participated in the cleanup day out there as well. Boys and Girls Club had many kids out there helping pick up trash along the roadway there. Thank you to our county staff who actually participated in some of the containers out there. Our sheriff's department that actually had some traffic control were present out there because there were individuals out there as well as children out there. Thank you for everybody that participated that Saturday, October 30th. And with that, Mr. Chair, that's all I have from announcements, other than one item is I would like to thank once again Brittany Montoya for assisting me through these last 3-4 weeks during some challenging times that I've had. And she is stepping up to the plate. She has stepped up to the plate, and she's actually going to be a good assistant to myself. And I also would like to thank the other liaisons that assisted her in welcoming her to the manager's office and assisting her with items that I needed to get done, to be done. And thank you for your liaisons that actually assisted, as well as my colleagues here for allowing your liaisons to assist Brittany. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, and I would ditto the sentiments as far as Veterans Day that's quickly approaching. A lot of times I wish that, people would recognize veterans on a daily basis because they have really committed to serve our country, and as the saying goes, freedom isn't free. There's always a price to be paid, and these veterans have gone out and represented us in a way that, a lot of people don't. We have emergency responders, we have our police department that put their lives in danger every day, but our military personnel also do that. So I just want, to recognize Veterans Day and just thank all our veterans. My father served in Vietnam in 1968 as well, so, I just want to thank him for his service and, thank, all of our veterans. You're really appreciated, and so thank you for all your service. Let me go to our next commissioner. Commissioner Hanson, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to share with all of you that I was recently elected president of the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. And I have the latest magazine, which is Land, Water, People, Time, and we have 7 to 8 pages in here talking about the 3 counties that are members of the heritage area, and I want to share those magazines with you so you can see all the great things that the heritage area is doing. We have a very nice office now in the heart of Espanola, and I'm honored to be able to serve as the president of this organization. I want to thank Commissioner Garcia for attending the petroglyph cleanup. I had my last coffee and tea the same day, and it was a little hard to be in two places at the same time. I keep telling Sarah, my constituent liaison, I want to be able to manifest in the 10 directions, but so far I haven't managed that. But so thank you. I did talk to Mr. Francisco, and he assured me from Solid Waste that he would be out there to pick up all of the things and all of the items when we were at our last SWAMA meeting. On Friday, I am giving a presentation on the nuclear waste transportation issue that Commissioner Hamilton and Commissioner Hughes and myself had all had presentations on to the Radioactive and Hazardous Waste Committee for the Legislators. Cynthia Wheeler will be also presenting with me. I also want to recognize that it is Native American Heritage Month, and that we should, like with Veterans Day, we should recognize that, especially in the land of enchantment in New Mexico, Native American Day and Veterans Day. My father served in World War II, and I am grateful that he made it back home alive and that I was born. And I know that he went and served because his homeland of Denmark was being brutally attacked by the Germans. Then Commissioner Hughes and I had a very wonderful Saturday, and I will let him say more about it at Casa Milagro, where they installed a new solar panel for Casa Milagro, which will cover over 70% of their, almost 100% of their electricity, and they'll be able to get off of propane. And Jennifer Romero was there also, and along with Mike from our opioid division in community services. So it was a great day, and thank you, Mr. Chair, very much for your time.
Thank you for sharing with your constituents and with the board today, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hughes, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things to add on to what Commissioner Hanson said. It was a very nice event at Casa Milagro, and these kind of projects not only help us meet our environmental commitments to reduce our use of fossil fuels, but it's going to save Casa Milagro somewhere, I think between about $10,000 and $20,000 in utility bills every year that they can put toward their mental health and housing needs. And so I would love to see us as a county promote or assist with or support morally more of these projects. Any social service agency that owns its building, could recognize these savings. And New Energy Economy was the sponsor for it. And so it was great to see them out there and be recognized. And Commissioner Hanson very generously shared her speaking time with me, which I appreciated. Just a couple other things. We had a town hall on water for District 5 that John Dupuy, our utilities director, attended, and the constituents from District 5, who are mostly all smarter than me, asked really good questions, and John Dupuy had really good answers, so it was a really good thing, and I think it helped people understand a little bit better how the county deals with water, as I've been learning, and people, as we know, have a lot of concerns about water, so that was great. And then I wanted to also mention, I need my glasses because I can't read my thing. Yesterday, Olivia Romo, my wonderful liaison, took me around District 5 and we looked at a couple of parks. Carlson Park, which is in a little neighborhood up by the highway on the frontage road, almost into Commissioner Garcia's district, but not quite. And it's a wonderful little park that we would hope to maybe get developed soon, not a terribly big project. And then we also looked at the Leo Gourelet Park, named after the sheriff's deputy who was slain almost 40 years ago, or maybe more than 40 years ago. But that park needs a little bit of an upgrade, and it's going to be rededicated with a monument to Mr. Gourelet for his service to Santa Fe County. And last but not least, next week, Commissioner Hanson and I will be meeting with some of the constituents who are asking us to do the ban on single-use plastic bags. This is an idea I got from Commissioner Hamilton, although I've changed it a little bit from what we talked about. But we plan to meet with those constituents and groups and talk about strategies for reducing plastic use in the county, because we know that's the companion to reducing our fossil fuel use. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hamilton?
Thank you. I don't have too much in the way of district updates, but I wanted to first, agree with everybody who's recognizing Veterans Day. And yeah, there's a little telling with age that my father was also in World War II and not Vietnam War. But besides that, we're very glad to have Commissioner Garcia back with us after having weathered some difficult times.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. I couldn't agree more with you. I'm glad to see Commissioner Garcia's back and feeling well. I think that was actually the meeting that I wasn't at as well. It was the same meeting that I wasn't at, so I was concerned when I heard that he wasn't feeling well. So thank you I'm glad you're back, Commissioner Garcia. I guess as far as my district, we do have a upcoming community meeting again. We're trying to put some paperwork in place so that we have a really good update for our next community meeting. So I'm hoping around the third week of this month, we'll probably have that. But we'll make an announcement and send out emails when we get closer to that date, or when we know we've got some paperwork in place so that we will have a good update for the community. So I'll give that update a little bit later. And so just once again, happy Veterans Day. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Garcia.
Mr. Chair, a couple of things. Apologize I didn't bring this up. First of all, thank you for your kind thoughts, commissioners, my colleagues. Thank you. I'm glad to see Mr. Commissioner Hughes actually went out to Leo Gourelet Park. That's actually a park that's been out there. I can imagine I was a little guy when my hair was, my hair was black. But it's interesting, Leo Gourelet was actually an individual, a deputy who actually was killed in the line of duty off of Airport Road in it used to be called Las Vitas Trailer Park, and it's still there. It's called Casitas, and his daughter actually is employed by Santa Fe County, and her name is Robin Gourelet. She actually works in our attorney's office, but that was her father that passed away in the line of duty. But it's good to have Robin Gourelet as one of our employees. She's an excellent employee. One other thing that I wanted to bring up, I was late for today's meeting regarding the invocation. There's two gentlemen that actually served on this dais for 16 years total. Commissioner Mike and Commissioner Robert and I. Their mom passed away within the last week, and my condolences go out to the entire Anaya family, very tight-knit family who live in my district in the southern part of the county, and were very instrumental in items that were in the last 16 years that were brought in front of this dais. Very instrumental in the county fair. A lot of those 80%, 90% of the individuals, children from the 4-H clubs and other clubs actually participate in the fair, and the Anaya family is very instrumental in the southern part of the state. But my condolences go out to the Anaya family, to Commissioner Mike and I, Robert and I. As I mentioned earlier, their entire family. And I will bring that up in the invocation at our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Hughes, and then I'll go to Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot to mention about Veterans Day that I too appreciate all our veterans, and my parents served in World War II on the state side as civilians, but they both worked for the Army. My mother was a map maker, and my father taught in the Signal Corps, taught the soldiers how to use their radios before they shipped overseas. And I know that made a huge impression on their lives, as it did of everyone who knows someone who served or was alive during that time. My brother was also a Navy veteran. And we all have lots of friends and acquaintances in Santa Fe County who've been veterans and worked on veterans issues, and so it's really good to acknowledge the sacrifice that people have made for our country and be thankful. And I just also want to add, I was so glad that Commissioner Garcia is with us again today.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you. I forgot to mention that it is the 200th anniversary of the opening of the Santa Fe Trail, and there are commemorative events on November 13th and 14th for the opening of the Santa Fe Trail. So it's 200 years old, and I think that is since it ended here. There are events happening on the plaza on November 14th from 10 to noon, and then there's an event happening in Glorietta, I believe. Also, as one of the passes, I read this on the National Park Service .gov website. So there are a number of events in Santa Fe County celebrating and commemorating the 200th anniversary of the opening of the Santa Fe Trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Can you repeat the dates? I believe Commissioner Garcia's
November 13th and 14th, and you can go to www.nps.gov/safe.index, and you can see what you can find. I found this this was in the bulletin from the Old Santa Fe Trail Association.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. We're going to go on to item number 9B, and this is other elected officials, issues and comments, including but not limited to constituent concerns, recognitions, and requests for updates for future presentations. I'm going to go first to our county clerk, Ms. Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank the commission for mentioning Veterans Day. Many of you know I come from a military family. My dad did 22 years in the Air Force. I was actually born on a military base, so I do appreciate that we are supporting our veterans. I wanted to thank everyone who came out and voted in our regular local election. We had nearly 25,000 voters in this election, and more than half came on election day. So it was a very busy election day for the clerk's office. I wanted to thank our sheriffs for helping support us by guarding our ballots, the city of Santa Fe for coordinating us and allowing us to be in the convention center to get our results. Again, our election workers, our staff at the clerk's office, there are a lot of people who help make elections happen, and I want to make sure that we thank all of them. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk, and once again, just great job on the election. As always, we always appreciate the clerk's office for all their hard work. I know it's sometimes can be pretty challenging, some of these elections. So, your staff, please extend our appreciation to all of your staff, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tessa Jo, do we have any other elected officials that are in the meeting virtually?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have Treasurer Manzanares. I'm not sure if she would like to speak. We also have Under Sheriff Johnson that has signed on. I'm not sure if he'd like to speak either.
Okay. Treasurer Manzanares?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I just wanted to remind everyone that we are in the delayed cycle right now where our tax bills have not gone out. So we've had some increase in phone calls, but for the most part, we got the word out to the community and all parts of the county to let everyone know that tax bills will be mailed out on December 1st. And so tax payments will be due December 10th through January 10th. So if there's anyone in your constituents area that have questions, are welcome to call us, but the message is the same. It will be delayed this year. And also as a follow-up to I think last month, Commissioner Roybal and I had shared there was an idea to talk more about a community healing garden. So I'm excited that we're going to go out into the community this week to look at a possible location and see if we can bring that to fruition in the near future under the leadership of Commissioner Roybal. So thank you, sir, for that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer, and I just want to thank you and your staff as well for your hard work and dedication. In our last investment meeting, I mean, it's really obvious on how hard your department works and the commitment to the county. So I just want to extend the appreciation from the commission for all your hard work, and please extend our gratitude to your staff as well. Okay, Under Sheriff Johnson, do you have any announcements that you would like to share today, sir?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Commissioner Garcia. Did you have a comment, sir?
Mr. Chairman, just, the tragedy that we had at the movie set many weeks ago, I would just like to commend the sheriff for doing an excellent job in speaking with the worldwide media, and very respectful, and he did, in my opinion, a great job. Thank you, Sheriff Mendoza.
Absolutely, Commissioner Garcia, thank you for bringing that up. Our Sheriff's Department does an outstanding job for the county, and so my appreciation to Sheriff Mendoza and Under Sheriff Johnson and all of the sheriff's deputies that serve. Any other questions or comments? Are there any other elected officials that would like to address their constituents or the commission? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close that item and move on to item number 10, and this is matters from the county attorney. Mr. Schaefer, can you tell us what we're going into executive session for, just a summary?
Mr. Chair, executive session will be for the purpose of discussion of bargaining strategy, preliminary to collective bargaining negotiations between the Board of County Commissioners and collective bargaining units as allowed by Section 1015(1)(h)(5). Threatened or pending litigation in which Santa Fe County is or may become a participant as allowed by Section 1015(1)(h)(7), NMSA 1978, and discussion of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights as allowed by Section 1015(1)(h)(8), NMSA 1978, including real property interests for Solid Waste Convenience Center, 2, breach of settlement agreement and related agreements related to annexation, and 3, discussion of bargaining strategy preliminary to collective bargaining negotiations concerning COVID-19 vaccine policy. And as this is the last item of business on the agenda, it would be appropriate if the board was so inclined to motion to adjourn the open meeting and move into executive session. And that would be the end of this evening's meeting in open session.
Mr. Chair.
I would agree with that. Commissioner Garcia?
I'd like to make a motion under item 10, managers from the county attorney, to move into executive session and as stated by the county attorney.
Okay, and then also that would include us adjourning from executive session and not returning to.
Yes, Mr. Chair, also adjourning from the regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Garcia, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. Can we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Anna Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hank Hughes,
Yes?
Commissioner Anna Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Rudy Garcia, and Chair Roy Ball.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Everybody have a great evening and have a safe Veterans Day.